Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ran. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. How are you doing? I'm doing good. Thank you for asking. We're back today with another painting. I got a comment. Somebody asked me to paint a lighthouse. They said they'd like to see a painting of a lighthouse, so that's what we're doing today. I really didn't know where to start off this painting, to be honest. I felt kind of overwhelmed because I felt like there was so much to do with this painting. So I decided just to start with just laying out all of my flat colors. So I started on with that path and then now working with the water. I'm really happy with how this water turned out in the end. I just ended up putting down some clean water, just coating the spot I wanted the water to be with just clean water, and then putting my paint onto it to help get a really even gradient. And then I did the same with the sky as well. So here I'm painting the little houses. This was all really straightforward. I pretty much only used my Winsor & Newton palette and just, I think, one color off of or out of my Vintage Pastels palette. And then here I'm painting the actual lighthouse. This painting ended up being a lot of blues and greens, but I feel like the lighthouse still stands out pretty well despite that because of doing it red. I think maybe if I had done it even more like an orange or maybe like a yellow, it would have popped even more, but I wanted to stick with the traditional red color of lighthouses. And then painting this wall, and then here I am starting on all the greenery. So I didn't know how I wanted to paint the greenery, but I did use gouache for all of the greenery in this painting. I wanted to incorporate some other medias outside of watercolor and colored pencil because a lot of people had said they really enjoyed my paintings that had other medias outside of those two, so I wanted to just slowly incorporate some other ones, and I'm not really well experienced with gouache. I've only used it a couple other times, so I thought this might be a good way to get some practice but also work it in and try and do some other ones since people were interested in that. So I did color mix some different shades of green and ended up with a dark value, a medium value, and then a light value. And so because I wasn't sure how I wanted to paint this greenery in, here you can see I had already started on some of it off camera because I just wanted to kind of experiment and see what I liked without the pressure of being filmed. And I ended up just kind of doing, when I started doing some more detailed leaves and shapes, and I felt like it was just too much. To me personally, I didn't like how that looked on this painting, so I ended up just putting in more rough shapes and then doing, of course, that darker value at the bottom or where things were in the forefront or just where I wanted some more definition, and then adding in some yellow just to kind of brighten it and give the illusion of sun hitting it in those higher points of the painting, if that makes sense, where the sun would naturally be hitting it and there would be highlights. Instead of doing that with a white with a Posca pen, I will use yellow instead, I guess is all I'm trying to say. So after painting some of that greenery, I wanted to take a break for a little bit because this painting does have so much greenery, and I had worked on the water a little bit more, and then now back to this greenery in the background by the houses. I ended up not putting as many details on the greenery that was back in the back, what is that called? The background of the page, because I figured you wouldn't be able to see it in real life. What was farther away would be more just shapes of color rather than details of color. And I also added some blue shadows to all of the greenery, just to kind of help tie in that blue in the water in the sky, so the whole painting would be more harmonious, but also because I figured the water would be casting a blue shadow. I think that's not rim lighting, I forget what that's called, but the water would be casting that blue shadow onto the greenery or the rocks, whatever it was. So just to kind of add in that color to keep the whole painting cohesive, but also for the sense of like, that's what it would be like more realistically. So I did add some shading on the lighthouse and the houses with darker values of the colors that were already put down, like adding that darker red, but I do go over it in a little bit with blue and add actual shadows with blue watercolor as well. And then here I was working on the pathing, and I really didn't know how I wanted it to look either. So I just kind of went for these like kind of cobblestone shapes and just worked on slowly building up some details and some darker values. I said this in my last video, but when in doubt, add higher contrast because it almost always makes everything look better. And then here I'm starting to add in some of that blue underneath that fence for shading. And then I apparently didn't film painting the bricks on the fence, but I put blue over top. I painted the bricks and then painted the blue on top of it for the shading. And then just adding some details. I pretty much lined everything, like added all the definition I wanted with watercolor or gouache on this painting. I only used a tiny bit of colored pencil in a couple spots. And here I'm adding the shading to the lighthouse and the houses. I feel like the blue there like really helped tie the painting together. And then lining the houses on the shadow side with a darker shade of blue, and then on the side where the light was hitting it, I used just a lighter shade of blue. I did that on the lighthouse as well. As you can see here, I'm lining it, with a little bit lighter shade of blue to just keep, again, the line work cohesive, but still kind of add that contrast between where light would be hitting and the shadows would be hitting. And then doing the clouds, and then adding the highlights on the water. I tried to do this with my Posca pen. I don't know, me and my Posca pen are having a fight right now and it doesn't want to work. So I ended up just using my white gouache to do that, which is not my favorite. I much prefer to do it with my Posca pen, but it worked. And this is how it turned out. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're still watching, as always, thank you for watching to the end. If there's anything you'd like to see me paint, let me know down in a comment below and I will try to paint it if I can. Remember to be kind and stay cozy, and I'll see you in the next one.